work on it and make it, or wait, is it, maybe it's like just, maybe it's paid from the beginning. It might be paid from the beginning. Let's see. Learn Keeper. I think that if I work on it and then you don't do it anymore, yeah, how much does it cost? Just so, since we're playing with it. Maintain access to your creations even without a subscription. So view and export your products and collaborate on projects owned by others. Okay. So then everything you need to build it, you know, unlimited. See, that's the thing I like. Yeah. Because then what I can do is I can also make like a world for my D&D club at the school too. Had the free trial and it won't let me do a free now. Yeah. So I think it just, yeah, you have to fork it over. Yeah. Is it one-time purchase or subscription? Requires a subscription. Participating in others is free. So that'll be nice if I give this to other people and they want, like, if they want to add more flavor to the land their character is from. Now that I've got the subscription, I can do it. A year's subscription is $90. Yeah, I mean, I spend more than $90 on Amazon with too much frequency, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, it is. And it's, you know, do I need to pay that much money on different things? No. Am I going to? I've done it. Yeah. Many of us do, right? So if I sit here and just, like, I spent on makeup stuff to get ready for the school year because a lot of my makeup finally, like, died. I mean, I'm not even wearing any right now, but I, like, for school and, like, for events and stuff, I like having it. But I spent more at Ulta the other day. This is so embarrassing to say out loud. Oh my God. I spent more at Ulta the other day than the cost of my flight to PAX U. Now, fortunately, I got like a good deal on the flight, so it's not that expensive, but it is still like when you do comparing that. I'm looking forward to seeing you too. I want to make sure I get to play a game with you this year. Last year I was so overwhelmed. This year I'm not doing anything with the Old Ways podcast. I've actually stepped away from them. Everything's all good. It's just I needed one less obligation, right? So like, you know, when you're doing games frequently and you're doing longer running campaigns, which is what I struggle with. Like, I love bouncing between different things because the moment something in my ADHD brain starts to feel like an obligation, I get there. And yeah, I just needed to leave more brain space. I'm going to be teaching an AP class this year, and I'm going to be doing the 2 productions at the school and running the D&D club plus my other classes. So it's like I need to preserve brain space and not have like that, you know, like the monkey on your back, I guess is like the phrase that they say. Not that it was a bad thing, like it, and I'm not meaning it in a bad way. I may be misusing the term in case that comes off that way, but it's just, you know, you got to give yourself a little levity. You got to give yourself a little bit of space to think and move. I gave up on makeup. I have such sensitive skin. It costs too much for the couple brands that are safe. Also, 56. I hate how it looks on me now. Yeah, I just like being casual with it right now. Like, yeah, I personally love how I look when I have makeup on. That's like, my vanity kicks in. If I put on an eyeliner and it looks really nice, or I have even just like nothing like this and I powder it so that like any little red bits that I get self-conscious about go away. But I've been trying to do more on skincare right now, which was also expensive, but you know. Ooh, I'm going to have several different one-shots in different systems with pre-built characters, especially mutants and masterminds, which I'm working on to get support from Green Ronin for. Nice! I put in an application for the PTI room. PAX U PTI. For this. So I wanna, yeah, because you know they've got like the get involved. I put it in intersection storyteller. So that way it's focusing on BIPOC, LGBTQIA, women, disability, and neurodiverse inclusive spaces. And they were right next to the they were right next door to the Monty Cook room last year, so I got to see and experience and be with that a lot. What I've put a focus in on is to try to get, because it was like, you know, what for highlighting diverse experiences, please list the things. No, not that one. It's this here. So, you know, what do you want to bring to this library schedule instead of anywhere else in PAX? I wanted to bring, well, first of all, I'm femme. Second of all, I am a part of the community, the Rainbow Club, my own ways. I also, I really want to, you know, I'm half Latin, all of those things. So I have like some of the check marks that are there, which often I feel like doesn't, I struggle with some of those things, like being able to check the boxes, but visually not being that. But my specific thing is that I want to be able to provide the opportunity for youths. Like I specifically put forward, it was like, do you have requests? I want teens. I want to put teens in that room where it's a safe space, specifically femme teens, BIPOC teens. I want them to be in a place where they don't feel dumb asking a question. And as a teacher, it's really hard to it's hard to help kids not feel dumb asking a question. But when you have such a short amount of time, I'm hoping that I can, you know, get that going. So I put it in there. I just threw, like, you know, shot my shot, because I don't know how to run games anywhere else at it other than, like, I guess you sit down and do that. So I don't know how else you register to, like, run games in rooms. Like, how do you do that? All right, so the PTI room, enforcers, yeah, like, I don't know how else, like, yeah, like, I guess do you go to a different exhibitor for it? Also, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize there were the wildfires were still going in Canada. I knew that it had been a second. I know when we had a wildfire at one of our state parks down here not too long ago, and it, like, I mean, it made the sky yellow. It was very, very creepy. Yeah, I don't know how to do, like, how do you run a game at PAX U? I don't know. The more you figure it out. Autographing, community meetups. Crokinole? What's a crokinole? Indie Games Night Market. I might see what you do for LARPing this year. Yeah. Are you coming to PAX U? Heck yeah, buddy. I was at PAX U last year and I got addicted. I have applied for a creator badge. I have put forward 2 panels, and then I have also applied for the intersection room. So I'm definitely going regardless, but, you know, there's that. I don't know what Omegathon is. Yeah, I wasn't sure where else I could get a game going. Green Ronin doesn't have an official room. I don't know if Kobold Press does. Last year, Monty Cook had a room, and I think... I just don't think that they've announced, like, a lot of the exhibitors yet. Because, like, the hall is down there. Yeah, I don't think they've announced the exhibitors for this year yet. I think because there's still, I mean, they've got to wait for PAX West to be done first. Yeah, so like for the schedule, yeah, they don't have anything else. Dedicated tournament, head to pre-registration for the, you know, like, I don't know. Autographs, LARP, learn and play, board gaming, all this, yeah. Yeah, I've been debating about coming, but if you're going, I'd love to say hi in person to that school course. Of course, yeah, absolutely. It is kind of cool to when we run into folks and find out they've got legs. That was what I was saying to everyone. I was just like, hey, oh my God, look at you, you've got legs. So yeah, so scavenger, see, like some of these things are not, I think that they just don't have any of that set up here. So like there's the free play area, of course. So I think that some of the stuff, like, you know, they're gonna get this all together. Puzzle rooms. Oh my gosh, are we gonna have like escape rooms? That'd be fun. Yeah, so I think they don't have any of that info out just yet. All right, gotta go. My stream is soon, and apparently they can all hear you, Mare. Oh, on your stream? Hello, Gods and Game Master streamers. Hello. Or am I duplicating somewhere? Alright, well, hi! Hello, I hope you guys are woohoo! Have a fun time! In fact, I'll probably send my folks that way if you don't mind, because I am wrapping up stream in about 5 minutes too. So let me go back to main then. On stream? We're gonna licky butt on stream? Hey!
Welcome to Worldbuilding Workshop and Ask Me Anything from Of Gods and Game Masters. Welcome to Worldbuilding Workshop and Ask Me Anything from Of Gods and... and I had my phone still on loud. Sorry about that. All right. Today we are doing world building for near future and cyberpunk settings with, inspirations from some very famous settings like the one in the picture, and some references to my own work as we move on. One of probably the beginning of the I don't know if the beginning. One of the biggest factors in a near future setting, especially if it's cyberpunk or the kind of high tech dystopias, is the progression toward a more and more corporate controlled society, which of course we can already see in our life today. So one of the things that I focus on very solidly is the corporations, the nature of the companies that form the power structure of the new world. Big examples for that: Cyberpunk 2077, Arasaka and Militech, and those companies are so absolutely integral to the style and feel of the setting that there's something that when you're building a cyberpunk or near future world, you should definitely concentrate on. Much like the last two streams where I talked about world building in a superheroic or supernatural setting and then focused in on more specifically world building in a city for such a setting, I'm probably going to do general world building today, and then I'm going to get into the cities and towns and more localized settings for cyberpunk next Friday for my next stream. So, as you can see, the world of cyberpunk and many near future settings is defined by a number of issues: corporate control, an ever-growing gap between the haves and have-nots, very often even more authoritarian regimes in many of the nations that remain, national fragmentation under stress from various disasters, some of which are technical, some of which are food-based. But one of the big things about near-future sci-fi and cyberpunk especially is the tension between increasing technology and increasing reliance on technology and an examination of what it means to be human and what it means to live under those changed circumstances. Most of our near-future and cyberpunk settings, at least in popular fiction, tend to be very dystopian, very dark. Things get worse before they get better. Exactly, Devious. More human than human is definitely one way to look at it. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is how to handle the transhumanist aspects without being ableist. Because one of the problems that you actually see in early cyberpunk literature is this idea that the more cybernetic modifications you have, the more technology you rely on, somehow the less human you are. And that has some very disturbing implications. Is it reasonable to say that someone is less human because they have a prosthetic leg, because they have an artificial heart, because they have cybernetic eyes to replace their own eyes that were damaged or that couldn't see to begin with? Are these people actually less human? The general implication in many cyberpunk genre games, especially Cyberpunk 2020, Cyberpunk Red, and the video game version further in the future, Cyberpunk 2077, and also Shadowrun, is that the more technology you have integrated with your body or replacing parts of your body, literally the less human you become. You lose empathy. You lose the ability to see other people as human. In Shadowrun, you lose the ability to interact with magic because you're less human. Cyberpsychosis is exactly the mechanic I'm talking about. Now, don't get me wrong, cyberpsychosis as a concept isn't as bad by itself. So, from my perspective, the way to handle that is with a pretty specific interpretation of what cyberpsychosis is. Let me see. I think this one covers it. Nope, that's about my computer tech. Big 9. Here we go. In my Atlantis 2150 setting, which is very specifically a setting I made for a more modern perspective on things cyberpunk and all. This is a very long doc. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but all the old games and novels and shit used to talk about cyberpsychosis, losing your humanity bit by bit as you replace your organic bits with metal. The more cyberware you had, the less human you were. Miss me with that ableist BS. Somebody ain't less human because they got a metal arm or prosthetic eyes. You get less human when you stop caring about yourself, about others. Seen it happen to ops and dregs and sits with no upgrades at all. More likely, lots of times, not all, the fucker who swaps out a perfectly good arm for chrome with a gun in it, or gets his reflexes jazzed, or dopes up on gene mod muscle growth also they can kill people better, was already a psycho. And we all know the saying about power corrupting, right? I'm just saying, the corp execs seem way colder and less human than any boosted op I've ever met. Motive, basic stability, empathy, got less to do with your metal to flesh ratio than you deciding but the ends defy the means. And man, is it easy to get lost in the game when you got no choice but to play. It ain't the chrome. It's power, it's poverty, it's addiction, it's survival. It's the wear and tear of a sterile society, or a living hell, or maybe just one bad day. So, you can have things like, quote unquote, cyberpsychosis, but they should be more based in why people got their cyberware and what they're doing and how that cyberware, the specific cyberware that they got, modifies the way they interact with the world rather than simple replacement, right? You could say that the more cybernetics they get voluntarily that make them more than human, that those might cause a certain diversion from an acceptable reality. But don't just say, oh yeah, he's more machine than man now, twisted and evil. Like, that started way the frick back in the original Star Wars, right? The implication that people with cybernetic replacements and modifications were going to inherently go insane and be evil started real early on. And yes, the Tyrell Corporation in Blade Runner. Blade Runner is very much a cyberpunk future without quite as much of the cyber. It's definitely dystopian future punk. That said, let's talk for a second about punk. What makes it punk, right? If you are playing a game, and it's even Cyberpunk 2077, and all you do is support the powers that be and run ops for the big corporations or the government or work for the police, and you're not out there rebelling against that, it's not really punk, right? If you're buying into the system and using it to your own advantage, it's not really punk. Correct. Punk means you're fighting against the man in some way. So in Shadowrun, where your Shadowrunners are all, or almost all, people operating outside the law and striking against corporations, even if they're working for some other corporation temporarily, that's punk. In the Cyberpunk 2077 game, don't get me wrong, I love the game. But in that game, you have to go out of your way to make punk choices, to stick it to the megacorps rather than simply working to support them. Certainly if you choose the devil ending in Cyberpunk 27, it is not very punk and you get punished for it. Spoilers. Anyway. Very little of Phantom Liberty, from my perspective, is punk. Because, again, you're working directly with one of the oppressive governments. Because it's not that Militech are the good guys and Arasaka are the bad guys. That's very obviously not the case from the way you first interact with Militech at the beginning of the game. And how Arasaka treats you through the whole thing and how they treat everyone around them. But for some reason, it's in through a lot of Phantom Liberty, you are kind of propagandized to believe that Militech and the NUSA are more good guys, and you spend a lot of time supporting them and propping them up. But yes, mega corporations are generally very authoritarian. Oppressive governments exist, and both of these things exist in tandem, and they're struggling against one another back and forth. Well, they actually have changed some of Cyberpunk's stuff as it's advanced, right? Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2077 both have much more wireless interfacing. Shadowrun, in the more recent editions, has their deckers and hackers operating right alongside their other Shadowrunners inside the enemy facility by using augmented reality and decking while also being inside the enemy physical fortress, because, you know, their wireless fortresses are harder to get through from the outside. So there is plenty of cyberpunk stuff being made now that takes into account the tech changes. That's one of the big reasons Cyberpunk 2077 is much the way it is. Like, seriously, extremely wireless heavy. I do recommend playing it. It is a fun game, and it teaches you a lot of cool things, and it can be mined for a lot of cool ideas. But it is also still mired in a couple of very problematic tropes, like cyberpsychosis / that ableist perspective, and also this Orientalist view and fear of Japan taking over the world that was very pervasive in Western culture in the 80s and 90s. Now they're kind of roped into their whole backstory now. So it became an AU that diverged from our reality before the game even starts. But modern cyberpunk fiction and modern cyberpunk and near future settings need to take into account how the world has changed. Yeah, AR with data mining, because you have your cybernetic eyes in, or you're wearing your Google glasses or whatever, and suddenly this holographic person, which maybe is so good you can't instantly tell the difference between reality and not, approaches you and says, "Hey, Devious, I have some laxative for," opens up his metaphorical and metaphysical trench coat and gives you a selection of digital options to choose from, because he knows about your search history, like you're pointing out. Ubiquitous augmented reality is actually way more terrifying than people give it credit for. Exactly. Because anything that makes it harder for us to determine what reality is and what it isn't is going to be disruptive. That could actually be a far more likely cause of cyberpsychosis than getting the cybernetics. Another potential cause for something like cyberpsychosis could be interacting too much with AI, and thus having your worldview tilted toward an inhuman, more cold perspective by your constant interactions with it. Especially if that AI is actual AI rather than stupid large language learning modules, right? Oh, yeah. Hacker hacks the local grid or even the national grid and puts out a false panic message and a distraction to type emergency services. I don't have to imagine that. I've had hackers do it in games I've run in order to divert police and ambulances away from what they were doing. And yes, Dino, it's going to be very Matrixy. The Matrix is also a cyberpunk story. It's just a different approach to a cyberpunk story. It's obviously a future story, and it's definitely punk because you're fighting the powers that be. It's just that in this case, the powers that be are the artificial intelligences that were created by the earlier cyberpunk-esque people who, if you've watched the Animatrix, you know only turned against humanity because humanity turned against them. Humanity started the war that AI finished by putting humans into the tubes in the Matrix. But so what I want to go to here very soon anyway, we've got an ad coming up in about 5 minutes. What I want to go to here is oh yeah, Matrix superimposed over your real world reality, selling you stuff. Not just selling you stuff, but leading you around by the nose, indicating to you that the world is a different thing than what it really is. Oh yeah, no, that AR is going to feed you exactly what that AR is paid to feed you, whether it be political, whether it be brand. Not that there's necessarily a difference in many of those dark futures, right? Politics and corporate power become so intertwined that in Cyberpunk 2077, Militech and the New USA are almost the same thing. Arasaka and Japan are the same thing. And yes, they are hell. We already have problems with all of us living in different realities based on the news that we intake, based on where we go for our knowledge. That will become even more the case if augmented reality operates the way we're talking about right now. Because the problem with augmented reality is, as you pointed out, it's not just adding things to your reality. It is conceptually, potentially subtracting them from your reality. And things we think are super innocent, like, I don't know, Pokemon Go played in AR mode. The wealthy might edit out the poor. The horror might be that reality is fake and finding out that it's real and having to re-believe the reality around you. All of those things are possible. And that, Dino, that takes us back to my leaving the cave world, doesn't it? And how in that world, the combination of magic and tech has edited reality for everyone. Hell, at least in leaving the cave, it's been edited in such a way that everyone believes the same false reality. Whereas in the future we're talking about here, it's been edited in such a way that which false reality you live in depends entirely upon which news organization / producer of AR goggles or cybernetic eyes or whatever you're attached to and what your subscriptions are. Of course, everything leads back to the cave. It's one of the oldest and deepest conceptions of objective versus subjective reality and truth that humanity developed. Yep, They Live is a good example. I need to see that episode of Black Mirror where soldiers were fed false images, think they were fighting mutant zombies. Absolutely. Because imagine you send your soldiers in to clear out a building full of squatters and you have their AR edited so that all of those squatters are in fact heavily armed terrorists who are blasting holes in people and holding prisoners and all this, right? And it may not just be visual. It can be auditory. If you have artificial limbs or artificial skin, or they have a direct implant in your brain, everything that you sense can be edited. Neuralink, anybody? Do you see why chips in your brain are scarier than any limb replacement might be? It's not just being hackable, it's being vulnerable. Yeah, obviously, an ad is coming up super quick, but I will continue to chit chat. I'm hoping folks will, hey, if you don't want ads, remember, follow, sub. I need subs. Hopefully, if I'm interesting enough and entertaining enough, y'all will want to do that. But yeah, one of the big things, we're talking about generalities right now, right? Concepts, but I do have some more concrete ideas and ways to help people figure out what you're doing. Yeah, absolutely. You can be thinking it's soldiers or even straight up vicious terrorist types, and it's just a group of normal people, and you're mowing them down. It's old ladies and kids and whatever, right? Humans are already horrifically susceptible to brainwashing that can convince them that real people aren't people. Imagine how much easier it is when they can actually make you see real people as not people. Yikes. Yeah, no, that kind of concept, a story where a woman had a brain damage and a company had a subscription service to make her whole again, but she was limited to where she could travel due to cell towers, and companies could buy ad space and force her to pitch their products. Like, it's dystopian, it's crazy, but it could happen in our future. We see things going that direction. Now, that being said, I am going to get less, I'm going to do some things as we're moving in rather than just the doom and gloom and horror of it all, which is there and it's cool. We're also going to actually talk about building, right? How to actually build a world that is evocative and probably to a certain extent scary. But the things to remember, I guess, as... Oh, yikes. Yeah, that's nasty. The things to remember as you're doing this really are about making sure you have the basis for the story you want to tell, for the games you want to play. And if you want to embrace the themes and concepts of high-tech, low-life futures, cyberpunk, etc., then you're going to need tech, humanity, where they intersect, and mega corporations and oppressive governments, and the act of rebelling against them, even if your rebellion is simply to opt out of their system and work from the shadows, right? It's like not like you're necessarily trying to overthrow the government, but at least you're trying to stick it to the man every little bit you can. That's the punk aspect of it. So when we're doing that, one of the... I have a kind of an intro for my Atlantis setting here. This one's much shorter than the other one. But it gives us some of the hits, right? The year's 2150, first of all. Atlantis, a corporate haven in the center of the Atlantic Ocean, used as a stop for transatlantic shipping as well as research and development that various governments might frown on. It was built by a loose alliance and consortium of 9 major megacorporations, an artificial island that they could treat as their own fiefdoms. As expected, that alliance is strained, and a whole lot of corporate espionage and secret conflict goes on there. Outside of the 9 corporate enclaves, Teeming masses of people lured here by the fraudulent promise of a better life are exploited by the corpse as raw material, test subjects, test markets, and examples of what happens to those who aren't loyal to their corporation. Some used to be corporate citizens, but were just tossed out into the shanty towns of the no man's land when they were laid off, a fate many consider worse than death. They are also used as cheap day labor by the corpse, and tossed back into the slums when the corp is finished with them. About 20 million people live on the island. Maybe 11 million of them are corporate citizens. The rest live in squalor, often without electricity or clean water. Tapping into the corporate grids is considered theft, whether of power, water, Wi-Fi. The no man's land between the enclaves subsists on occasional, quote, humanitarian food and water airdrops, fishing, and aquaculture, as the, quote, land of the island is too artificial to grow crops. There's often quite a conflict over the airdrops, as petty warlords grab everything they can to cement their power. Gangs and, quote, crime are ever present. But what is crime when there are no other options? Against this primitive backdrop, the corporate enclaves are shining, clean, orderly, and tyrannical. Many dregs, which is what the corpos call the people living outside the enclaves, dream of somehow getting accepted inside. But just as many corpos dream of freedom, even at the cost of their livelihoods and safety. Super high tech shows up in the slums, sometimes as part of a test project, sometimes stolen. The dregs cobble together tech from what pieces they can scavenge. A few, just a few, dream of revolution. More dream of escape. Either is hard, and you gotta live. Gotta make those creds, or find enough scav to barter for the things you need to survive, or escape, or rebel. So, did that not show up? Oh, come on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You heard me. That setting was created for me to illustrate some of the extremes of a cyberpunk setting. A massive, bigger than Night City style setting where the corporations are the closest thing there is to a legitimate government, but they don't agree with each other entirely. And the majority of the island is completely lawless. Let me bring up the very, very bare bones, simple map. Because I think it's worth talking about, and it actually has the names of the 9 major corporations on it. Nope, that's not the one. That's the other one. There it is. That is Atlantis. An artificial island cut up into 9 equal parts. Technically, all of the areas inside of a piece of pie are that corporation's territory. But in practice, only a small section of it is actually used by the corporation directly. And in order to illustrate that, I'm actually going to open the map instead of just the picture of the map. Because what that allows me to do is make some markings on it, right? So, So on this map, you'll note that each of the 9 sections has the area marked, as I pointed out. Yep. Yeah, well, yeah, part of the idea was to have 9 different takes on a cyber setting all on one island. Absolutely. So here we have the area of Gene Engine that they actually control. Their actual corporate enclave. Right? That territory in blue. That's about the same for each of them. Everything else, all of that huge area in the middle, is no man's land. This area is also a shanty town, but less of one, and was basically put together by people who had escaped from the main island and put it together themselves. They made their own secondary island. And also all around these, you have like Freetown is basically a giant boat city made by people who managed to escape from the main island but couldn't go much further. And in the center, there is a park that they intended to use as a meeting place and this great beautiful thing, because originally the whole island was going to be this hyper advanced city, but they realized they didn't need that much space, and that having all these extra people inside was useful to them. Horrible, but there it is. So with that said, you can see we've got 9 different corporations. But of course, it's important that those corporations actually be different, right? And that's where we get to talking about the Big 9. The Big 9 are definitely mega international, but each of them comes from originally a specific nation where they are still headquartered. And yes, they are, if you pay attention, they are modeled on real world corporations, but they are not real world corporations. That smaller island could also be some left over of the base that people building the big island used. It was abandoned when the main island was completed. That is very good, Edwin. I like that idea. Thank you. When you're building your cyberpunk worlds, if you are only building them for use at your own table, you can absolutely just go, yeah, this is Mitsubishi. Yeah, this is Sears. Yeah, this is Vanguard Group. This is BlackRock. And use the real world corporations and have them extend further, right? Go into the future and see what you think they would be. Perfectly valid. If you want to avoid getting in trouble with mega corporations that exist in the real world, there's a reason that,, you know, Fallout talks about Nuka-Cola, that, 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 you Shadowrun talks about Ares Corp that Cyberpunk 2077 has Militech in Arasaka. Could be a free floating. They're both man-made. Okay, the island of Atlantis is specifically man-made, but yeah, could be a man-made island outside Corp Law. And they would only bother to go after them when they were causing trouble for the corporations, right? But they could also see it, especially if it's higher tech than the inner sections, they could see it as a place to get mercenaries. Correct. They don't want their IP to be nuked, which is why if you're making something for sale or for an actual play or for anything that's public facing, make up new. Yeah, no, oil rig with ships. Oil rig is a good basis for such a thing. Absolutely is. But yeah, if you're going to do anything public facing, anything other people outside your table are going to see, make up fictional corporations. For instance, I have Kuriyama International, which means in Japanese Black Mountain. They are headquartered in Tokyo, Japan. They are highly diversified because they're an old-fashioned zaibatsu. If you don't know what the word zaibatsu means, I heartily suggest you go and look it up, because it is in many ways critical to what we understand to be the standards of cyberpunk as we know them. The zaibatsu concept is where mega corporations come from. Nope, that's not spelled right. Of course, one of the most obvious mega corporations in our world in modern day right now is actually Disney. And like the mega corporations of the Cyberpunk future and Shadowrun future, they actually have their own police forces. They're close to being extraterritorial multinational, right? And that's one of the big things about many future corporations is they either control the country they're based in, or they are so multinational that no one country is actually allowed to take them to task. We have Dubai Energy, which is based in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and focuses on green energy supply. Because in this world, one of the things that happened was, this is post-climate change. There's more, the water levels have risen worldwide. The temperatures are higher. The storms are worse. And even the oil barons eventually went, oh, we got to do something else. And Dubai Manufacturing got out ahead of it, or Dubai Energy got out ahead of it and started working on quote-unquote green energy supply. Whether they actually are doing that or not is up for debate, but it's certainly what they claim. Then we have Ogun Heavy Industries, based out of the Lagos Free City in West Africa. In the real world in modern day, that is Lagos, Nigeria. But in my fictional forward world, it is a quote-unquote free city, by which I mean it is actually pretty much owned by Ogun Heavy Industries. They are just considered a free city because they're not under the dominance of the government. Because Lagos in the real world is kind of a very good example of what a cyberpunk city would look like. And it already looks that way. It is bright and shining and beautiful, and right next to it are brutal slums and shanty towns. Lagos is a crazy city. If you don't know anything about Lagos, Nigeria, again, I suggest you go look it up. Be prepared to be mildly disturbed. It appears in Avengers Civil War at the beginning. They are running through Lagos when the chasing Crossbones, when the explosion happens that, partially is responsible for them making the Sokovia Accords. Kailin Transport out of Beijing, China. Yeah, so Ogun Heavy Industries, Lagos City, West Africa, makes heavy industrial equipment, metallurgy, weapons manufacturing as their primaries. Of course, all of these things are highly diversified. Kaijin Transport, mainly vehicles and shipping. Roswell Omnitech Corporation in Roswell, New Mexico. Primary product and field, all advanced technologies. Run by CEO David John Weber, a retired U.S. Space Force general. I think I have another file of the big... Oh, no, it's the individual things. But yeah, I've got the major corporations and their leaders and all that set up for this world, which I've used once. And eventually, hopefully, that will be shown. I can't really talk about it until it comes out. But I will use it again for Cyberpunk, I promise. But back to the big nine, because I can't find the other thing. Gene Engine Biotech out of Greater Los Angeles, California, USA. Biotechnology. Black Cross Securities out of London, England, UK. They do security tech, private security, financial, and weapons tech. We've got Vorhut Group out of Zurich, Switzerland, doing investment and financial. And Yunha Corp out of Songdo, Korea. Computers, electronics, telecom, space travel, and satellites. Yunha Corp, each of these is kind of an XP of a real company, with what I like to think are clever names. Like Yunha Corp is a reference to Samsung Galaxy, because Samsung means 3 stars, and the reason that they have the Samsung Galaxy is it represents the company being powerful and everlasting like the stars. Yunha means galaxy or Milky Way, so they are the Galaxy Corporation or Milky Way Corporation. Yeah, no, that's a good name. But yeah, each of the names has something clever like that built into it. Roswell Omnitech Corporation, based in Roswell, New Mexico. You should probably think a little bit about why it is what it is. And I'm sure one of you can tell me where Roswell Omnitech got its start. I've used that corporation in superhero games as well. But yeah, so those are my big 9. And when you're creating these corporations, you need to think about what they do, where they're based, what their culture is like, what they say they do with their slogan and their mission statement, and like who's in charge of them. For instance, let's look at specifically Roswell Omnitech Corporation. Roswell Omnitech Corporation. Let me make sure I'm actually sharing this file instead of just messing around with it. Where is it? There we go. Rocco DT. Roswell Omnitech Corporation, I'll get to that in a second. Actually, no, I'll go ahead and answer that. You can, if your corporate overlord, like, if you live inside of Roswell Omnitech section, then you're a Roswell Omnitech employee. And the only way you can transfer to living in a different enclave is to change... Nice. That's a good name. Imaginatech. We know you better than you know yourself because we wrote the code for you. But yeah, if you live in one of the corporate enclaves, you can only transfer to living in another corporate enclave by changing jobs. You can only change jobs either with the permission of your current employer or by being headhunted, where they literally will send, like, this is something that happens a lot in Shadowrun. They will literally send someone from one, they will send a team of operatives from one corporation to extract a high value employee from another corporation, right? And bring them to the other enclave and make them an employee of the new corporation. It's considered a type of corporate espionage. If you live in the no man's land between them, nobody's paying attention to where you move around and live. If you live in the largest section, again, of that chunk, right? If you live in that big damn blue area in the center, sure, you can move around perfectly fine, because while there are these big highways and these big railways, that's almost all the infrastructure they put up, and you just find a way to jump them and move into the next slice, which they do call them slices. But moving from something like Gene Engine, right? Here would require you to get pulled out. Yeah, that is a good point for naming. The Three Diamonds naming is pretty cool. And they probably had it for both reasons, honestly. People are complicated. Siberian, innovation that outlives you. Yeah, no, all of those are good names. Just think about how important those corporations are and why, right? For example, actually, we're going to get into the examples after our break, because the ad break is coming up real soon. And when we get an ad break, I tend to like to take my break. But yeah, when we come back, I'll talk about Roswell Omnitech Corporation and go through my setup for explaining corporations, because it's something you could use yourselves, because I think the format covers most of what you need. Like the other ways I've done these things, I've taken formats from various Cyberpunk games for corporations and distilled them and taken the good parts from all of them to come up with what I have here. And I have one of these entries for each of my corporations. But yeah, we're mainly talking about them in terms of in terms of how we can each apply these concepts, right? I'm not just here to show off my work, although I love doing that. I'm also here to help you guys when you decide to build a world like this. I want to give you as many tools as possible to build it well and to have the best idea possible of how it will operate. We have an ad starting in just a few seconds, so I am going to go ahead and take our break. Please come back in about 10 minutes and join us. Right now, go have a cigarette, Go get some coffee, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do, and I will see you guys back for the second half as we talk about specific corporations and how to build them for your cyberpunk setting. All right? Cool. Welcome back, everyone, to World Building Workshop and Ask Me Anything. World building for near future and cyberpunk settings from Of Gods and Game Masters. Dino just asked us a really good question. What is a megacorp? What is necessary to be a megacorp? What are the signs of a corporation becoming a megacorporation or is set to become a megacorporation? And the answer, like many answers, is both simple and complicated. The simple answer is that a corporation becomes a megacorporation when the power of that... There we go. Blocking my own view. When the power of that corporation becomes such that they are a power unto themselves. They become a megacorporation when they are so multinational and so rich that governments fear to interfere with them. In many cyberpunk situations and settings, a megacorporation is defined by being extraterritorial, which means their land, whatever they own, is legally not part of whatever country they're in. It is legally just the territory of that megacorp. From a wider perspective, the megacorporation is based on the Japanese idea of the Zaibatsu. A megacorporation is a conglomerate of a hugely wide variety of investments and companies and industries so that they have a much broader influence on the world than just say, hey, we're this one corporation that makes this one thing. In a lot of ways, in modern day, things like Vanguard and BlackRock and Warren Buffett's investment corporation are megacorporations. They own so much of our world, so much of our ways to do things, so much of our supply chain, that they control the economy. That is a megacorporation. In many settings, there's even steps of megacorporation. In Shadowrun, there are 8 or 9 really major megacorporations that form something called the corporate court, which handles conflicts between those corporations, kind of like a corporate UN. There's a similar structure in Cyberpunk 2020 and its sequels, including Cyberpunk 2077. And that was actually first shown in the seminal cyberpunk novel Neuromancer by William Gibson. Which established many of the cyberpunk tropes and arguably created the genre. What do you think the impact of AI will be on the genre of cyberpunk? Hackers falling in love with catfish AI in the cybertopia of the net, ninja AI, mind assassins. All of those, like, sent to destroy companies by infiltrating and spawning rapidly in the corporate structure networks. AI agents whose job it is to serve as your personal filter to prohibit some of these ubiquitous artificial reality ads. First of all, you're going to have to, though the prohibition programs are going to probably be way more expensive than the AR programs. It is certainly possible for all of those things to exist in a cyberpunk setting. It is also possible for that to be a rich people problem, specifically a first world problem, as people like to say, with the grand majority of people not even having the money to have those problems, not even having the money to worry about that super high tech that is increasingly available only to the richest of the rich. But it's also possible that via the slow trickle down of high tech into lower strata of society, or them constantly testing these things on the lower strata of society before implementing them for higher ups, it could be that they would all have them. Yes, AR glasses could very well be cheap by design for that specific purpose. And again, there's going to be a lot of cheap tech out there for them to use to test all these things on the lesser markets before moving them into the higher money sections. Those are all things that could well be part of it. So looking at how to build a corporation. Roswell Omnitech. My format has the headquarters, the slogan, the mission statement, primary product, and CEO. Above that, I have the intro. Roswell Omnitech Corporation, ROC, or ROC for short. The corporation was founded in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, producing parts and technology for the ongoing rocketry program started there in the 1930s, and continuing as an exclusive defense contractor until the closure of Walker Air Force Base in 1967. Around that time, ROC became a publicly traded company, still with extensive defense contracts, but branching out into all fields of high technology. By the end of the 20th century, it had quietly gobbled up better-known companies like Lockheed Martin and General Electric. In the 150 years since that time, acquisitions and mergers have made ROC the premier technology company on the planet, in fields from nuclear energy to computer nanochip manufacture to nanotech repair systems and advanced robotics. They are one of the top 3 producers of neural interfacing cybernetics. Because of their extensive experience with dangerous robotics and cybernetics, their STAR, or Special Tactics and Response Teams, are considered the optimal choice for dealing with rogue robotics and cyber-enhanced individuals. ROC owns patents and copyrights to many technologies that the others of the Big Nine would want, but very carefully guards them both in the courts of law and with very high levels of security. The ROC STAR teams have their own dedicated team of lawyers to handle problems incurred while operating on the sovereign territory of other corporations or even national governments. Other important legal divisions, of course, handle IP law, patents, copyrights, etc. The cheap ones might come with a lot of company resets that you can't change. Air glasses, privacy costs extra. Yup, absolutely. Absolutely, the cheapest ones will be ad heavy, and they're going to constantly send all your information back to the main company. Thank you. I'm really fond of rock stars. I've used them in a superhero game as well, and the rock star they were the first superheroes on the planet in that world. It was kind of neat. Again, somebody tell me where they think, the Roswell Omnitech Corporation got its start and why. Okay, so Roswell Omnitech Corporation's headquarters is in Roswell, New Mexico, in the USA. Slogan: "We build the future." Their official mission statement: ROC commits to advancing science and technology for the betterment of all mankind while providing extraordinary value to our customers and shareholders. Their primary product and field is all advanced technologies. Their CEO is David John Weber, retired U.S. Space Force General. that gives you an idea, I think, of the sort of things you should know about your mega corporation, right? I'll give you one other example of, what one of the builds, one of the designs is, but I'm going to let the chat choose which of the remaining 8 groups that I cover. Do you want us to cover Gene Engine, Black Cross, Vorhut, Kailin, Kuriyama, Dubai, Yunha, Ogun? What do you want us to cover? Dino is voting for Kailin. Okay, anybody else? Devious, do you have a vote? Anybody else who's here have a vote they'd like to put in for which of the mega corporations I cover next? Obviously, these profiles, again, are their public-facing profiles. This is how they are trying to present themselves in the setting. But you can read quite a bit into them and figure out more about them if you really think it through. Anyone? No one? All right. Kailin it is. Have to do an enclave based on Neuralink. It's going to go places. I'm not doing an enclave based, again, this may at some point be real, something I actually publish, so I am not basing it directly on any real world item. I don't want to get sued to death. Sorry, but I just don't. All right, Kailin Transport. Kailin Transport, the premier transport and shipping company on the planet. Kailin focuses on their specialty far more than the other big corps. Nearly everyone ships with Kailin these days, as they absorbed companies like UPS, DHL, FedEx, and more in the 2050s. Most national postal services actually subcontract their delivery services to Kailin. They also make all their own vehicles, and many for other corporations, from ships to delivery vans to cargo planes, trains, and trucks. Their other holdings allow them to control their entire process, from manufacture of shipping and handling tools to the final delivery and tracking systems. Their logistics software lines are unmatched. They originally formed in 2032 as a merger of the Shenzhen Group and Shipku. The Zheng family, makers of electric vehicle batteries, acquired control of the company in 2036. Kailin Transport, headquarters, Beijing, China. Slogan, Kailin, we get you where you need to go. Mission statement, to ship anything, anywhere, on time and undamaged, thus creating and preserving value in the global marketplace. Their primary product and field is vehicles and shipping, and their CEO is Zheng Luchao. So, as you can see, what you're going to want to do for, again, at least your public-facing stuff about your what you're going to want to do for at least your public facing stuff about your corporations is handle it in such a way that it shows what you're doing with them and gives people an idea of what kind of a company they are with their public facing stuff. And then you also need to figure out what they're like in the background. You need to address how they actually operate as opposed to how they say they operate, and thus what their reputation is amongst other corporations and amongst the populace that are outside those corporations, right? An example of that, again, from far more well-known IPs than mine, is the reputation Arasaka has in Cyberpunk 2077 versus the reputation that Kang Liao has, the reputation that Militech has, what the average person knows about, what they portray public facing, what the average person believes about them, what street ops believe about them, what other corporations believe about them, and then the truth. So that's kind of a lot to need to know, but I honestly think it's important to know that much about companies that are such big drivers of much of what goes on in both the foreground and the background of a cyberpunk setting. Yeah, the majority of transportation is handled by the Kylin. It's not just the island. It's worldwide. These 9 megacorps are the 9 strongest megacorps in the world. It's not just, we don't want your product to move across this island, it won't. In general, if we don't want your product to move across the world, then you're going to have to spend a whole lot more money developing your own infrastructure to make up for what we choose to do or not do. As a result, Kylin tends to stay out of a lot of corporate wars and so on. They tend to be very neutral peacemakers. And they tend to be allowed to stay neutral because their shipping monopoly is so important to everyone else. Because all of the energy they spend on new shipping technology and techniques is money and time the other corporations can spend on their specializations. These 9 corporations, even when they're maneuvering against each other, tend to operate in ways that are not entirely antagonistic, because they are able to maintain their control over the world better by operating in tandem most of the time. So you don't get really big public corporate wars. You get a lot of secret public, a lot of secret corporate espionage and a lot of secret corporate assassinations and theft of people, and nobody admits it's happening so that they don't have to go to war until it gets just too bad and then something breaks loose. So they're not nearly as antagonistic towards each other, at least publicly, as, say, Militech and Arasaka are in the Cyberpunk 2077 universe, because in general, that's bad for business, and all they want to do is make more money. That is their primary goal, is to control the world financially. and too many corporate wars interferes with that, which in the history of this setting they've actually they've actually discovered the hard way. Echo cloning, you're not the customer, you're the product. Yes, yep, absolutely. Gene, the company that is most likely to do that sort of thing in the megacorp that would have Echo cloning as a subsidiary would be Gene Engine. I fear that is relatively obvious given its nom de guerre. But yeah, because, Gene Engine Biotech. And if y'all are interested, I'll cover that. But I was going to go ahead. Is there an enclave that covers food, water production? No. Because that, sort of, right? No one wants to be that vulnerable to others controlling their food and water. And again, it's not just, keep in mind, these are not just the enclaves. We're not talking about the enclaves as separate from the rest of the world. The enclaves are the arm on the island of a worldwide megacorporation. This is in the future of our world in 2150. The rest of the world still exists. These corporations are all multinational. Most food and water, almost all food and water is shipped in, so the closest thing would be Kailin. But all of the enclaves have their own hydroponic farms and things like that, and their own water desalinization plants. Yep. Also that, yes. The agritech, the hydroponic agritech is all handled by bots. When it isn't intentionally handled by dregs that they've pulled in, on the island at least, dregs that they've pulled in from the no man's land, from the between, as they call it, intentionally to operate at an actually lower cost than operating the robots. Corporate wars are usually not profitable, but a Cold War of sorts with hired mercs they can disavow knowledge of makes for a rich player character base. Yes, exactly. That is how these things are handled. Ops are hired from the between. Ops are hired from the slices, and not only disavowed if necessary, but often disposed of afterward so they can't talk. But not always. You wanted to see if there were any corporations that really went into the concept of food enhancements or even water-infused enhancing. Do you mean enhancing? Yep. Huge population of unemployed. Absolutely. And all over the world, and especially on the island, where people came because they thought they were going to have a bright future, and now they're simply being used. And this is possibly one of the worst versions of it, because these are societies that don't care that happened. And on the island especially, they're barely even provided anything for. Some countries have gone out of their way to do things like universal basic income so that people can at least survive, but they're not given a good quality of life. Dino says, I wanted to see if there were any corporations that really went into the concept of food enhancements or water-infused enhancing. I think that would go under the banner of medications and like. Do you mean enhancing people by the food and water that they eat, or enhancing the food and water? Like, I don't think I understand the question exactly. Because that being the case, I think I'm going to have to open up Gene Engine so you can see where it goes, because it is the closest in terms of food stuff, right? Gene Engine Biotech, also known as GEB. UBI with Yep. UBI was enough to barely afford micro apartments about the size of prison cells and the least palatable of protein-rich gruel. Absolutely. So that everyone's always on the verge of starvation and have a horrible life, so they will do anything to get out of it, making them extraordinarily vulnerable to the corporate manipulation. But maintaining a large underclass that still will pay what little extra they have for entertainment or whatever. Because they need to maintain people to buy their stuff and test their stuff on, etc., etc. They have just enough extra to spend just a little bit here and there. Okay. Just enough to enhance the people by the food and water that I digest. Okay. That's weird. I heard a guy up on level 47 ate a cheeseburger once, but that's a rumor. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into GEB. Gene Engine Biotech. An all-American company, GEB has cornered the market on advanced genetic engineering, especially genetic mods to humans. They also produce large quantities of vat-grown foodstuffs, replacement organs, tailored viruses for healthcare, vaccines, everything that could possibly be made in Biolab. It formed in 2027 when CEO Robert Bradway of Amgen arranged the merger and acquisitions of Bayer, Moderna, Novo Nordisk, and Monsanto. They engineer crops and creatures to thrive in the changing world of 2150. Only rock comes even close to what they can do with genetic engineering. Their healthcare and EMS subsidiary, SAVE, Solutions to Ailments and Violence Enterprises, maintains most of the ambulances and response teams on the island. Gene Engine Biotech, Greater LA, California, USA. Slogan: Natural solutions to life's problems. Mission statement: to use biotech to improve quality of life for all people while creating value for customers and shareholders alike. Primary product and field: biotechnology. CEO Bob Bradway IV. So, of course it is, yeah. So, yeah, no, but Taco Bell probably belongs to Gene Engine. But, oh yeah, by all people they mean they're rich. Nobody else is people. Everybody else is raw materials. Duh. But yeah, Gene Engine Biotech are the ones that handle a lot of the food, because while you have hydroponic food growth, meat and things like it are almost entirely vat grown these days. But eating actual meat from an actual animal, in some countries it's seen as uncivilized and cruel. In other countries it's only available to the rich and or famous, and in some countries it's both. Like, the common people are conditioned to believe that eating meat from an animal that actually was alive is horrible and evil, but then they maintain secret farms, etc., to provide that meat to the rich. Fish are super popular food all over the world because there's a lot more water, etc. The really fricked up part about fish being a super popular food, you'll notice that the enclaves are all the way around the outside of the island. Thus, the poor people on the island can't get to the water to fish. Pulls up to the walkthrough and talks into the bot. Yeah, can I get a Soylent Green chalupa and a side of cinechurros and a Roca-Cola with no ice? That will be $537.77.327. Thank you. Please insert your arm so that we may take the blood and tissue to verify that you have such in your credit account. Right, so yeah, stuck between a rock and a hard place. That actually is a really good name for an adventure, right? In this setting. But yeah, it is very important to think about where the food comes from and what people eat and what has changed, which is why I'm glad you brought up that question. Damn, screw the churros and the Coca-Cola, just the Soylent Green chalupa. Damn credits, right? Now, the lucky thing is, because the primary food proteins are vat grown, is that Soylent Green itself actually becomes a less likely situation, right? They're not going to be recycling human bodies into food, at least not directly. Bio waste, including bodies of the poor, could end up going into reclamation vats to be broken down into their constituent proteins to feed the vat grown meats. But it's not quite as obvious, like you say, as Soylent Green is people. Yeah. Humans, the grand majority of humans in cyberpunk settings in general, but specifically in Atlantis, are raw materials. They are resources more than they are people. They are quote-unquote customers because, of course, like I said, they make sure that people get paid enough that they can spend some money on some things, which keeps the economy going round a bit. But they always keep you hungry, physically and metaphysically. Yup, we bring people together in a blender. Nice. One of the other things to note is that Cyberpunk is not, despite its grim and dark perspective, which most near future is these days, we can have a whole different talk about near future solarpunk and near future hope style campaigns. Although, one thing to make sure there is in a campaign like this, if you don't want your players to burn out, if you don't want to turn off everybody, make sure there's some hope somewhere, right? No matter how dark it is. But just because a setting like this is dark and horrific does not make it realistic. our society is far more likely to collapse completely than it is to go to these extremes, simply because once the basic person no longer has money to buy things, rich people don't buy enough things, which doesn't supply enough to make an economy keep going. So we're far more likely to have an entire societal collapse and or revolution before anything gets to this horrific a level. We know it's probably Christmas by the marks we made on the wall, and the robots made us a pile and found one fingerprint in it. Fun times. That it's not impossible for something like that to be the case, but that is even a little more, right? That's not dystopia. That's post-apoc. But then again, this particular dystopia that I've built is mildly post-apocalyptic. Taking it... Oh, look, Grandma's wedding ring. Yeesh. Taking it back a bit, I have my full intro to Atlantis. You know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and read it. We'll skip the section on cyberpsychosis since I already read it. Atlantis 2150. The corpse, the gangs, the cops, the psychos, all the ingredients for what folks used to call cyberpunk back in the day. All on a man-made, corp-owned island in the middle of the Atlantic, split up between the big 9 megacorps and their safe enclaves, and what corp cits, or corporate citizens, call scavs and dregs, trying to survive in the no-man's land between them. The only law inside the enclaves is corporate law, varying a bit from corp to corp, but, quote, protecting only their own citizens, mostly the execs, and exploiting everybody else as much as possible. The only law outside? The law of the jungle. Eat or be eaten. Kill or be killed. Way worse than animals. Humans get nasty under pressure. Find your pack, fight to survive, fight to feed yourself, your family. Make it one more day. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get a chance for some payback, or to strike a blow for freedom, or to change the world for the better. Atlantis, between the walls. The corps, of course, use the gangs for proxy wars against each other to test the weapons they build, the nasty tech they want to make a big profit on. They use each gang to keep the others in check, to keep the dregs and scavs busy fighting each other and their eyes off the enclaves and the suits responsible for all this. Yeah. Suicide and incineration booths. Gotta love it. They use the poor everyday SOBs scrabbling to survive between the walls as an example to their citizens of what their life would be like without the corp. It helps keep the cits in line. Corps also use dregs as human test subjects for products, both with and without their knowledge and consent. People will do crazy shit to get out of the hell that is the between. How do all those people get there if they aren't part of a corp, you ask? Well, some came as corporate employees. They got fired, kicked out into the between with nothing. Others came on their own, looking for new opportunity as refugees from the wars and poverty everywhere. Propaganda still put out, making Atlantis seem like a great place, a paradise, an open asylum for those with nowhere left to go. People keep coming, even though Drags and Rebs put plenty of truth out on the airwaves to warn people off. Escaping Atlantis ain't easy. Lots of people got nowhere to go. Corp enclaves hold about 11 million people, give or take. There ain't no census of the between, but estimates range from 5 million people to as many as 15 million. Like I said, ain't nobody really counting. All this on an island maybe 50 miles in diameter, roughly circular. The enclaves are relatively small in area, built upwards and downwards underwater, with mega buildings, arcologies, and skyscrapers taller than Dubai in the early 21st. Layers of city, one on top of the other. Down near the surface, it stays dark most of the time. It gets rough, nearly as bad as living in the between. Out in the between, shanty towns, floating boat cities around the edges, stretches of empty land dotted with old munitions from skirmishes the corps denied they ever had. You can make a lot of cred running deniable ops for and against the local corps, too. The local intercorp currency is called O-balls, and yeah, they use preloaded credit cards for most transactions, or Cards linked directly to your account if you're a Sith. Get caught? Well, you're just a few crazy dregs or Reb terrorists or gangers. Nothing to do with the corpse, right? Everybody knows how it works, and a scav's gotta eat. Some of the big warlords on the major gangs built their nest egg that way, and some ops even made it into employment with the corpse. If folks want that kind of thing. Way more fill unmarked graves all over the island, or get their corpse tossed in the ocean, or just rendered down into ashes, or biomass for fertilizer. Waste not, want not. Am I right? Skip the cyberpsychosis section. Why so many refugees? Well, it's 2150. The sea level's risen like between 5 and 8 meters. Everywhere. Huge sections of the coast are gone, and the places most people to live are gone with them. Rising global temperatures have caused catastrophic climate change, and places that used to have water don't. Places that used to be temperate are nearly tropical. The tropics are nearly unlivable. Lots and lots of species are just gone. Most coral is bleached and died, except for coral grown in carefully controlled aquaculture environments. The only reason we got food at all is vat-grown stuff, gene-modded stuff to grow in the new normal, all that. But there ain't enough, a lot of places, and even if there is, there's no profit in distributing it, so the corps don't. Governments? Don't make me laugh. They still play big political games, but they haven't been relevant for years except as a smokescreen to keep at least a few people thinking the system ain't rigged. So, yeah. My cyberpunk setting of Atlantis is definitely a little bit post-apocalyptic, but then it's not really the only one. If you look at the stories of Cyberpunk 2077, they've had a number of repeated apocalypses, right? Corporate wars, plagues, food problems, the collapse of the net at the end of the 20s or 30s that leads into Cyberpunk Red. Yeah. So, the thing about them is they tend to be post-apocalypse. Like the apocalypse happens and there's some recovery, and that's when you get one of the cyberpunk eras. During the actual apocalypses, it's less cyber. It can still be punk, but it's less cyber. Sign you up, as in you want to live here, or you just want to pretend to live here. You want to play in this particular messed up cyberpunk world. Because I can set up a game at some point, but you know, I very rarely run games for free these days. So, other than, you know, friends and fam, as you might expect, man's got to make a living, right? Yeah, play in, not live in. I absolutely get it. Absolutely get it. The game I ran this setting in once was a World of Darkness game. I won't go any further than that, but I could just as easily run it in Genesis or GURPS. I think I'd probably prefer GURPS because I just like how GURPS handles cybernetics and things like it in general. But hey, if y'all are still here listening to me ramble, then you probably like at least a little bit of what I do. So you could, you know, subscribe and like, or tell your friends and come and check it out. And check out my work on my website and on my YouTube and all that stuff. You know? Man needs to make some support as we go on. But no, I do appreciate everybody being here, whether you are talking with me or just lurking. You are all appreciated and you are loved, because you all help me get to the goals I'm trying to get to in the long run. Because I do this tabletop role-playing game world building shtick for a living. I do not have another job right now. Right now, paid games get me what money I get, right? I'm not really making enough money on anything else to count it. But in the long run, I'd prefer to be better known for world building, teaching world building, creating tabletop role playing game materials than I am for just running paid games online. Not that I'll stop doing that probably, because I also enjoy running games just tremendously. But Dino, you said sign me up. If I actually set up a GURPS Cyberpunk game, or go back and set up, if I you know what, I'll put it, if I set up a GURPS Cyberpunk game, could you actually say to me that you join it? I make more money from running games, Devious. My products barely sell. I haven't made any money on drive-through this month. I haven't made any money on my web store this month. I made like $8 in sales last month, and because it wasn't high enough, I still haven't gotten any of that money, because it has to get to a certain threshold before drive-through will send you anything. I make like $90 a month on Patreon total. I occasionally get lucky and get a commission or a gig for writing for other tabletop people. Not real often, but when I do, it helps. At the moment, the grand, like 95% of my personal income is from running games, and I'm trying to get more games because it's not enough. So yeah, maybe it's because my material is more niche, but it's also really a flooded it's a flooded market in a lot of ways in tabletop, and it's really hard to stand out. But it's doable. Dino, I've got several games that have at least one opening. I do want to run this setting because I really, really love it. So I may set it up at some point. But let me go ahead and shameless plug myself. I run games on Start Playing. I have a number of games available. Some of them are during the day, some of them are in the evening. Boom. Those are that's my Start Playing thing. I haven't it'll take me probably a week to set up a Cyberpunk game, and I'll have to figure out what days they might be available. I don't know what time of day or what days you have most available, Dino. But I'm willing to tailor some operations. It's like right now, this evening at 6 o'clock, I have a full GURPS horror game set in the world of Fell Hunters, but it's called The Heirs of Harrow House. And they've, a bunch of people have gone to their ancestors' home to determine why it's haunted and what to do about it. Tomorrow night, I've got let me look at my calendar real quick. What is today? It is the 10th. Tomorrow night, I've got After Baldur's Gate, which is also full. But I have scheduled, and available, my Fell Hunters game where you play mercenary monster hunters in a 17th century world, working for the church that nonetheless hates you. Shadows of Leoranshire tomorrow at 2 p.m., which is a Tales of the Valiant horror campaign. Last Hope is full, which is my Tuesday game tomorrow night at 7. World That Needs Heroes, I think, still has an opening. That's Superheroes at 8 p.m. on alternate Wednesdays. I've got an opening in the Derelict GURPS Space at 8 p.m. on Thursdays, and I'm trying to start my Barrow, The Cage, Mutants and Masterminds Superheroic Horror at 2 p.m. on Thursdays. My Fallout game on next Sunday is full. Spears of Lou on alternate Thursdays is a GURPS fantasy game. And Knights of the Broken Wheel is a GURPS fantasy game in that same world. So, yeah, so there's a number of different options. But yeah, if you know somebody who's looking for a game, tell them I got a wide variety of open ones. And if people are available for daytime games, man, I've got 3 days of daytime games that are wide the hell open because I've got almost nobody signing up for them. Those are going to be shorter term because I have to go back to watching the Munchkins after my partner goes back to work. But we'll see what we can do. If one of my current games falls apart, because they sometimes do from time to time, I'll seriously consider throwing this GURPS game up. When you get a minute, do a search for Next Tech in the Freedom Series library. I did a series articles on technology right on the cusp of for M&M. Yeah, no, that's super useful, both for this purpose, for near future world building, because of course you can do near future and cyberpunk in Mutants and Masterminds if you want to. You absolutely can. So that's certainly a possibility. I actually spent some time and effort making Star Wars characters in Mutants and Masterminds. Ended up working out remarkably well, all things considered. I actually managed to balance a smuggler against a Jedi in Mutants and Masterminds, which I think is impressive as heck. But yeah, anywho, we are coming up on the end, my beautiful friends, the end of today's broadcast. We have been world building for a near future and cyberpunk setting. We are going to get down to brass tacks. Next episode of World Building Workshop and Ask Me Anything with city building, and I think that we're probably going to do some collaborative city building as we do it. All right? Because there are a lot of things that matter in terms of city building that matter even more for them than the broad strokes we did today. Even though we talked about it in terms of a city, we really were talking about the corporations and the broad strokes of the world. Cities get interesting because then you start talking, again, like I pointed out in the last two EPs, we start talking about neighborhoods and power structures and gangs, right? We get down literally to the nitty-gritty and what it means to live in those worlds more so. But yeah, anybody who can, you just slap that follow if you haven't, and then sub if you can. And I did not record this version, sadly, but I'll see if I can find a way to download my own VOD so I can put it over on YouTube for posterity. If you did miss the last two episodes. They are already over on YouTube. Of Gods and Game Masters, same deal. Just look and go find. And if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube, which, by the way, remember, YouTube subscriptions are free. If you're not already subscribed to my YouTube, please go do so and watch some of my videos. I might eventually make some money off YouTube. Help support a struggling artist. Tuesday through Fridays open at any time. Going to be joining Derelict. Sweet. What? Anytime? That's crazy. The days I can't... Okay, so... Got Mondays. Heck. Look at my actual calendar, not just the game calendar. All right, so... The days that I will have daytime games at the moment are just Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for Fell Hunters, Shadows of Leoranshire, and Barrow. Unless, of course, I go even earlier on Wednesday. I don't want to interrupt my 4 p.m. office hours. But I will if that's the only day I can get a game and shift it over. But when you say anytime, what do you mean by anytime? Be clear, Dino. Be clear. Sometimes the delay drives me a little bug nuts. Oh, anything before midnight. You mean like after 6 a.m. PST? Is that what we're saying? Because you said anything before midnight or like 6 a.m. PST. Is that anything before midnight or after 6 a.m.? Okay, cool. All right, well, I'll keep that in mind. And if you have anybody else you'd like to drag in, I'll keep you posted on what games I have going. All right, folks, I need to get offline, rest my throat, get some food so that I can be ready for, the things that pay the bills, which I have a game right at 6 p.m. It has been a wonder and a joy talking to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. And remember, if you got nothing else, just go and check out my website because there's tons of free stuff. And it'll get more people to check it out. And the more people that check it out, the more people might look at my store or just decide I'm cool. If you're not on my Discord, you should do that too. Because my Discord is cool. Come join us on the Discord. We will talk. All right. I'll see you on the Derelict. Well, very good. I think that's awesome of you, and I will be glad to see you there. That being the case, the Derelict first game is the first game you'll be there for is on Thursday coming up. So you and I need to talk about your character before we get there. All right. It has been good to chat with all of you, and thank you for being here. But there's the link to my Discord, and I will see you all later. Remember, I am always available on my Discord for talking about world building, and I have tons of world building help on my website. This is what I'm here for, to make the best worlds possible and to help you do the same. Ciao.